Assalamualaikum and hi to everyone. So thank you for watching this video. In this video, we will discuss on the DNS, URL, URN, and URR, URN, URL, and URI. Okay. So what is DNS? DNS is referred to the domain name system. When you're accessing to the internet, you using the DNS. Okay, Uniform Resource Locator, or known as the URL, will specify the internet address of a file or any resources that stored in your host of computer, which is a server. So that server is connected to the internet. That's why you can access the file from the internet through the URL. URL translate into a numeric address using a DNS domain name system. When you type URL in the browser, so this application layer based on the OSI layer, the application layer called the service of the application layer is called the DNS to translate the human friendly URL into a computer friendly IP address. What is the human friendly URL? Okay, example http dot www http double dot slash slash double slash www.google.com. That is the human friendly URL. So the DNS we translate into the numeric address that computer friendly, which refer to the numeric value. So DNS perform this translation by consulting the database maintained by the domain name. Okay. Domain name registrar. Okay. It will refer URL, and then the DNS will translate the human friendly URL into the computer friendly IP address. So computer always read the numeric value. The DNS is responsible for translating the www.google.com, the domain human friendly, into the IP address that computer able to understand. For example, 17.112.152.32. So that is the numeric value for the IP address Apple, for example. So when you type www.apple.com, the DNS will translate the www.apple.com into IP address 17.112.152.32. So this DNS is work as a phone book of the internet. It look up a name and find its number. Okay, the analogy is like phone book. You find the name of Miss Najwa, and then you find what is the number of her phone. So DNS is work like that, but it look to internet, look up for the name, and it find the number. So it's allowed the computer to translate that number because computer only understand the number. So a DNS refer to a network service that associate alphanumeric host name to their equivalent IP address. The domain name or the IP address give the destination location for the URL. And then the URL are sensitive to correct the spelling and additional space and upper or lower case letter. So it's very sensitive. Any spelling, any incorrect spelling are not allow you to visit the destination of website that you want. Okay, done for the DNS domain name system. It work as the phone book. Okay. So now we go for the URL. What is the URL? Uniform Resource Locator. Okay, a URL is made up of many parts. So the generic anatomy of a URL is begin with the protocol. It's begin with the protocol, double dash, double slash, the domain name, slash the path or the folder name, slash the file name that you want to find. Okay, for example, here we have URL equal to HTTPS. So HTTPS is the protocol, double dot, double slash, simsweb.uitm.edu.my. This one is the domain name. And then followed by slash, sportal underscore apps, slash sportal underscore login. This one is the path file. And followed by slash index.html. So this one is the file name. So this is the generic anatomy for the URL. What is the protocol? Protocol, it specifies the transfer protocol that will be used in order to retrieve the desired resources. What kind of resources that you want? So protocol, the definition is protocol is the rules that govern the communication between the user to the server in order to find the resources. So example of the protocol, it can be HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It can be HTTPS, Secure Protocol, or it can be File Transfer Protocol, FTP. So there are the protocol that are needed in order for you to allow communicate from one device to another device. Okay, the next part we go for the domain name. What is the domain name? Before this we just discussed about domain name system. So this part is about domain name. What is the domain name? The domain name is also known as a website name or the host name. It always divide into 3 parts. It's begin with the www. Okay, and then after that followed by UITM, and then followed by .edu.my. So actually, based on the 3 part, you have www, and then the second level name, and then the top level name, the organization. Okay, at the last part, you may have .com, .org for organization and profit. You can have .com refer for the commercial domain. You can have .gov for the government, .net for the network resources, .edu for the education. Most of the university and all the university inside in this world will use .edu as refer to the education, and .ac for the academic. Okay, that are the domain name, the familiar domain name that you will use later on. Okay, and then we also have path. What is path? Path is the directory, the folder at the server. Okay, for example, when you create a file or you develop a website, you have several files, and your several file will be stored in several folder. So in order to find that file that you already created as the interface, you need to go to the path or the directory. So path is referred to the directory or the folder on the server, in the server. So the path is used to specify the file or the resources that requested based on the URL. And then the last part of the URL is the file name. So the file name is the element of URL that store in the path or that store in the directory. So basically and usually your file must be .htm, .html, .php, and so on. So based on what kind of resources that you want to look for. Okay, the DNS is implemented as a distributed system and has the hierarchical structure. Okay, you can find by your own what other hierarchical structure for the DNS, or you can look at this picture or this figure. Okay, DNS hierarchical. You have the root for DNS server, and then from the root, this one is the first level, and then second level at the .com, DNS server, .org, .edu, .net, .ac. Okay, and then this part is the authoritative server, yahoo.com, amazon.com, IEEE.org, okay, your itm.edu, for example. So these are the hierarchical of the DNS. So the hierarchical structure is represented look like a tree base from the root, and then it have the branch, many branch. So each branch below a node is a DNS domain, and DNS domain can contain hosts or other domain, subdomain. So later on, when you go for the website that provide the web hosting services, you can look at the specification. Do they provide subdomain? Is it free for the domain name? So there are the kind of things that as the web developer should know when they want to create a website or develop an application. Okay, now we focus on what is URL, what is URN, and what is URN. What the difference between URN, URI, and URL? Okay, URL is now considered as a subset of the URI. URL, subset of the URI. URI is a string character that used to identify name or resources in the internet. URL find the location of the internet. URN identifier to identify the resource by a unique persistent name. Okay. For example, we look one by one first. Every URL is a URI. Every URN is a URI. URI and URL are not interchangeable, and a URL is a URI, but URI is not always a URL. Okay. URL contains information about how to fetch the resources from its location. Uniform resource location. So it based on the location, it find it try to retrieve the document, for example. URN. So URL begin with the protocol, and then followed by the domain name, and then followed by the directory, and then the last part is the file name, location. URN is identify a resource by a unique and persistent name. So it is usually start with a prefix URN. Start with the URN double dot. Okay, URN can be idea and a concept. When we use the URN, it doesn't represent a document. It can be translated into the URL by a resolver. So the document can then be downloaded from the URL. You only know the URN, but instead of to find the document or the resources, it will translate the URN into the URL. Okay, example of the URN is the ISBN number. So let's say you have URN double dot ISBN double dot the number of ISBN in order to identify the book. Okay, when you type that part, will use the resolver in order to translate that URN into the URL. So you will find the URL book. And the last part is URI, Uniform Resource Identifier. So the URI encompasses URLs, URNs, and other way to identify a resources. Okay, so we give an analogy in a simple analogy of finding a book. URN is a globally known unique name like ISBN. So you use the URN, which is refer to the ISBN, to find a book. URI is the identifier that representing the content of the book. Okay, you use URN in order to find the book. General, generic, globally unique. Okay. And then URI, it will find and identify the content of the book. URL help you to identify the location of the book. So that are the difference between the URL, URI, and URNs. So that's all in this video. So supposedly you know what is the URL, what is the URN, what is the URI. So don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. Thank you very much. See you next video.